Good morning, everybody. I'd like to take you through the story of what we're actually trying to do with heavy goods vehicle platooning trials here in the UK. Before I do that, I'd just like to explain a little bit about who TRL actually is. For those of you that don't know, TRL, the Transport Research Laboratory, actually we've been around for 85 years, having started out originally as part of government in the 1930s, and then we were privatized into a foundation business in 1996. We continued our work in the private sector really as a foundation, as a non-profit distributing organization that very much focuses on research, on technology, and on innovation. And actually we have quite an international dimension to our business, spanning 145 countries throughout the world. And when I talk about innovation, there is actually a whole story of different things we've done over many decades, ranging from our participation actually in the war effort with Wallis and his bouncing bomb, the motorway network that of course all of us use continually throughout the UK. Actually TRL had a key role in developing the thinking behind where those motorways should be built, how they should be built, and more importantly how they should be laid out in terms of the lane discipline and particularly junctions. And even today the UK motorway network is one of the safest motorway networks in the world per journey mile compared to many, many other countries. Some of the work we've been doing in autonomous vehicles here in the 1970s, there's lots of talk about autonomy and driverless cars going on since probably 2010 onwards, particularly with Google and Waymo. But actually TRL was doing some of those innovative research programs back in the 1960s and 1970s. And of course crashworthiness is a key thing that TRL is well known for, particularly in terms of the disruption in the automotive industry around crashworthiness. But I'm not really here to talk too much about the wider TRL. It's very much around platooning. And actually we embarked the back end of last year on a two and a half year program funded by government to actually really look at, is platooning commercially viable? Is it safe? Does it actually save money? And how will members of the public and other road users interact with platooning technology? I stress this is not a technology demonstration. There are technology demonstrations that have already been going on around the world. There's lots of platooning trials in the US, there's various platooning trials in continental Europe, but these have really been looking at the technology and proving that the technology technically works. And all of those trials have really been done in closed environments without live traffic. What we're doing differently here, which we believe is a world first, we're not aware anyone else in the world has done this or is doing this right now, is to actually put platooning technology in amongst real traffic, real road users, congested motorways, other trucks, other cars, and so on. So before I explain a little bit more on this, I'd like to ask another question, not specifically about platooning like the last one, but a broader question. And this is whether or not you agree with the statement around connectivity, highly automated vehicles actually improving journey time reliability, increasing road capacity, lowering operating costs, and reducing deaths and serious injuries on the road. What I'm really looking at is, do you think this kind of technological innovation is beneficial to society and beneficial to the economy or not? And it's very much the kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as before. So please vote now. Wow, okay. That's a statement that's a little bit more positive, I guess, than the one particularly around platooning that we heard earlier on. Thank you for that. So I'd like to explain a little bit more about what we're actually doing in the platooning program. Firstly, the profile of the project. We certainly have strong stakeholder commitment. The Department for Transport, Highways England, they've actually provided about £8 million worth of funding for this two and a half year program. They're making a lot of statements about it. They're very excited about the potential, particularly because this relates to the wider government policy around the industrial strategy and really trying to put the UK ahead of other countries in innovation. So really strong stakeholder support from government. But when I talk about platooning, for those that aren't that familiar with the kind of technology, without going into a lot of detail around what the technology is, I mean, there are various components to it, but the one thing it isn't is driverless trucks. There is a big difference between platooning and self-driving trucks where there are no drivers. In this case, there is always a driver in the vehicle, and this is a level of technological automation that goes beyond what is currently available in trucks today. So the objectives for the project actually come across these 5 areas. I mean, firstly and foremost, safety, safety, safety. It's all about whatever we do, particularly because we're planning to do it in a live traffic environment, we must do it very, very safely. So we're looking very closely at how we collect the right amount of evidence to prove that it is safe to do, both for the drivers themselves, for other road users, but also looking at safety from the point of view of cyber attacks on such vehicles, as well as the physical safety element. But the other reason that we're doing these trials is to look very much at the economic case for platooning and whether or not all the claims around fuel consumption reductions are real, and whether or not the associated emissions are therefore improved. The commercial viability, lots of the trials that have been done so far talk a lot about the kind of benefits that platooning brings, but no one has really actually embedded it into a real-life operational environment from a point of view of a freight and logistics operation. So we're going to be doing that and then really testing and validating the operational efficiency of platooning. Of course, the highway operators, those that are managing the physical infrastructure, want to know what this does to the strategic road network in the UK. Is this going to create traffic jams? Is this going to ease traffic? Is this going to create more incidents and potential accidents of some sort? Or is it going to reduce accidents over time? Will it create any new issues around wear and tear on the pavement structure of the motorway surface? And then finally, there's the kind of market engagement, the societal engagement, really wanting the general public and all road users to feel comfortable with this kind of technology as something that they will experience if they're driving on the motorways. So the partners, the people that we were actually working with, there's a whole range of different organizations, very credible organizations that have done a lot of work in this area already. I would just kind of pick out DAF and DHL here. DAF are the organization that will be providing us with the platoon-enabled trucks. We're actually going to have 3 trucks and 9 trailers for the whole program. And then DHL as an operator who will actually be embedding these trucks and using DHL drivers over time to provide the real kind of operational experience and the operational evidence. So really embedded fully within their operation, doing some of their journeys and moving some of their goods and services around the country. But it's not just around the people that we're working with, there's also the wider engagement. So we're actually creating an advisory board that consists of international experts, so we're not trying to relearn all those things that other countries have already learnt on this topic. We have some OEMs engaged, the likes of Bosch and so on. Road safety groups, the RAC are involved in this. The freight community, other road user groups and so on, infrastructure providers like Costain. So we're trying to get other expert organizations to participate in an advisory capacity so that even those that are very cynical and perhaps very challenging about what we're trying to do provide us with their valuable input. The phases is very much a 4-phase program. We're deep in the planning phase at the moment. We're actually sourcing the vehicles, getting the vehicles all fitted out with the right equipment. We're looking carefully at where across the motorway network in the UK we should actually run these trials. Is this going to be up and down the M1, the M6? Are we going to use the M4? Are we going to use the M2 corridor down to the Channel Tunnel and so on? So we're still looking very carefully at where is the right place, both from a safety point of view, but also to prove the economic case. We will then move into road trials, which won't be until probably the early part, the spring of next year. But that will still be with all of the project team. And then we will shift from there with a higher level of confidence into full operational trials using DHL drivers in phase 3. And then, of course, we'll have a reporting section at the end. So the detailed planning that we're in at the moment involves a lot of training, a lot of validation, and particularly a lot of focus on the safety case. The initial road trial, this will be very much about proving that everything we've said it was going to do, it actually does. And we will start doing this probably at night, probably in low volume areas, lower risk areas of the strategic road network, before we start moving with more confidence into the more congested areas at more congested times. The operator trial will be a lot more extensive, and this will be really embedding it confidently in real life operations, but we'll also be looking very carefully at other user behavior, other driver behavior, other vehicles on the road at this time. And just to give a scale of the operational aspect, we're actually going to do 140 journeys in platooning configurations and 140 journeys of normal operations. And each journey is going to be about 100 miles. So we're actually going to do about 14,000 miles of platooning and 14,000 miles without platooning and compare the difference. And actually that's going to take some time, and that's actually a more statistically meaningful evidence point than just technology-based demonstrations, which is what most other countries have done so far. The analysis and reporting, this will, I think, provide a lot of evidence both for government but also for commercial industry about whether, if you're buying new trucks, should you buy platoon-enabled trucks? Is there an economic case for having that additional capability, and should you be embedding those services into your day-to-day operations? So in terms of the planning activity, as I mentioned, we're looking very closely at which parts of the strategic road network we want to run. We're looking very carefully at how we train the drivers and what the procedures will be for the driver operation. The whole risk assessment around the safety cases is key, but also recognizing that not everything will go perfectly well all of the time, so making sure we have very, very clear procedures around incident management and aborting the platooning process and going back to normal driving where needed. And of course, we have a risk management process and a methodology, but we very specifically have one here that looks very closely at the driver operating procedures and the risk management activity around that. We're doing a lot of work in our simulator capabilities. We have a DigiTruck simulator, and we also have a DigiCar simulator where we're actually going to put a lot of people through kind of car simulations where they will be exposed in simulation situations to platooning trucks on the motorway network. But really the possibilities that we're looking for, it's very much this objective evidence around the fuel efficiency. This is very much around aerodynamics of three vehicles running together in close proximity, getting the aerodynamic benefit. So we see fuel economy as being a key benefit, reduced emissions, but the fuel economy, there's been claims of 5, 10, even up to 30%, and these seem to be extremely high percentages, but nobody's really done it in real life traffic conditions. Of course, the CO2 and the NOx would follow through on that, and that's a very positive outcome as well if we can prove any of these kind of benefits are real. Lots of projects have been talking also about the improvement in traffic flow, particularly where you see with smart motorways at the moment, the kind of orchestration of traffic movement in volume. And if you can introduce platooning with some level of orchestration of traffic movement, the view is it will be beneficial in that way as well. But finally, the safety element. A lot of this technology will be always switched on. So even if it's disengaged to some degree because the driver is driving the vehicle as normal, a lot of this additional technology will further improve the safety regime for the vehicle itself. So in summary, really, the UK has an unprecedented opportunity to take the lead in trialling platooning as a technology. This is very much around diesel vehicles. but this can apply similarly to electrification or any of these other propulsion systems, because this is very much around aerodynamics. The more you can make the aerodynamic efficiency of the vehicle improved, then whatever propulsion system, you will gain some kind of benefit. But this is something that can apply today to diesel vehicles and will be relatively future-proofed as you shift towards other propulsion systems. But the key thing that's different here is very much the idea that it's real-life traffic conditions. No one else in the world is doing this. We have to do it right. We have to make sure it's safe, but this will be a world first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. And as expected, dozens and dozens of questions. And I think what I won't be able to read them all out, but if you really do want to talk to Rob, I would suggest you do so afterwards, because this is obviously a very interesting subject to the audience. Where do we begin? Will platooning be able to adjust to weather conditions to always allow enough braking distance?
Yes. The idea is, I think, that the vehicles, depending on what speed they're actually going, they will be roughly half a second apart. So that will be the distance that we're maintaining. Clearly, we've got to look at braking performance and tyres and so on, and always making sure that that safety distance is applicable for the road conditions at the time and the quality of the vehicle in terms of its maintenance regime.
Does platooning have a future with electric-powered trucks?
I believe so, very much.
Because it will increase the range. Absolutely.
Yes.
With so many overnight road closures, especially M6, where LGVs are constantly diverted off through local roads, what's the future of platooning in those circumstances?
I think ultimately platooning really only works where traffic conditions allow, from a safety and a congestion point of view, but where also there's some commercial benefit from having the aerodynamics working for a period of time. So you can't really enable platooning in really slow-moving, congested traffic, because you're not really getting much in the way of aerodynamic benefit. So you've got to be going at speed in reasonably free-flowing traffic. So inevitably, this will be something that is switched on and off through the day based on operations of the fleet companies.
One that's come up several times: will the platoons block motorists try to leave or enter the motorway, given the high number of junctions on UK motorways?
This is something we need to validate. Our belief is no. If you actually look at a lot of truck behaviours, and I'm very conscious of the audience in the room, but trucks do tend to drive quite closely together already in kind of manually driven mode, and I think arguably our half a second distance in some cases will be more manageable than some of the behaviours we see today. So at the moment, we don't think it will impair people getting on and off the motorways at junctions, because we're only ever going to do a maximum of 3 trucks, and we think it's manageable.
Okay, here's an interesting philosophical one. Do the marginal benefits of between 10 to 15% decrease in fuel consumption gained from platooning justify the extra risks that it creates?
It depends whether there are extra risks, because if these systems are complementary to the fact that there's a human in the vehicle, so we're not talking about driverless trucks, then this is ADAS, this is additional kind of driver assist systems. Our argument is this is an improvement in safety. Need to prove it through evidence, but our view it's an improvement in safety, and therefore if there are commercial benefits as well, then that's a win-win.
Okay. And why aren't we seeing more on the media to get public buy-in?
We would like to do more in the media. If there's any media here, then we would like some more coverage on this topic. I mean, we were very pleased with the coverage we got last year when the program was announced. Unfortunately, some of the media were thinking we were talking about driverless trucks and not platooning of trucks. So we've had to kind of modify the message a little bit to make that really clear. We will be wanting to do more and more kind of market exposure around this program, particularly through the advisory group membership as well.
Okay. And finally, on a slightly lighter note, will you, during the trials, be delivering to KFC? You don't have to answer that one, mate. Rob,
Personally, no.
thank you very much indeed. Okay.